Welcome to a team selection video for Matchday 3, and there's a lot to go over in this video because not only am I going to talk briefly about how Matchday 2 went and my Limitless chip, but I'm also going to be previewing how my team is going to be looking like in Matchday 3, as well as a potential wildcard team that I'm going to be using, and also a Limitless chip for those of you who haven't used it yet. And I think Matchday 3 poses a great opportunity to take advantage. And as you can see at the top of your screen, the league code is there. So if you haven't joined already, use that league code, or in the description below, there's also a link. So if you just click on it, you automatically join. So bear that in mind. You can join the Dylan RCM League, and all the very best of luck to every single one of you. And hopefully you have a fantastic season. But let's go over this. I'm just going to talk briefly. There's a few things that really kind of frustrating because this could have been such a great week. I could have been looking at 70, 80 points, but of course I did make some mistakes. So Donnarumma in goal, happy with that, 6 points. I probably won't be bringing Lloris on. And Spinazzola also a clean sheet, pretty happy with him. Yarmolenko 10 points. It's a fantastic performance. He looks so sharp and he could have gotten even more goals. Gareth Bale captaincy, I mean, this is another one and kind of a nearly a 16-point haul, but instead he got 9 points, 18 as my captain. Very happy with him, and I kept the captaincy on the Welshman. And to be honest, I got him in quite late, and if you actually saw my deadline stream, I had Kevin De Bruyne in, and in the end he got 10 points from the bench, which is a bit frustrating, but I did get Gareth Bale to replace him, but obviously ideally I would have had both of them. And then, the rest are just blanks. Lukaku, Insigne, Wijnaldum, Thomas Meunier and Zinchenko, all blanks. And the penalty that Ukraine conceded was so pointless. I think the Ukraine keeper was doing really well, but then you look at the defence and it was just awful for that goal. But in the end, I made some very big calls and didn't go with Dumfries. I don't trust Netherlands' defence, and that's the main reason why. And I also thought that Austria was, for example, a more difficult fixture than North Macedonia on paper. And in the end, Dumfries' attacking potential is just too big to ignore. So fair play to any of you who do have him. I wish I had him in the end. And with Thomas Meunier, I mean, he was lucky to even concede just the one goal. Belgium could have been, 2 or 3 down in the first half. They were just getting completely dominated. But as soon as Kevin De Bruyne came in, that completely changed the game. And the De Bruyne decision not sticking with him in the end was mainly because some of the viewers, and thank you to all of you who actually pointed this out, you pointed me to a reliable source that said him and Eden Hazard would be benched, and that's what put me off. So I can't really beat myself too much about that decision, but ultimately Kevin De Bruyne is that good that even with a cameo he can do the business against a good team like Denmark. So obviously not too worried about that, but I think the Zinchenko to Dumfries swing is what really has separated this from an average week to a great one, unfortunately. But on the bench, I've still got Hernandez, Mbappe and Jordi Alba potentially to come on. Harry Kane and Sterling, we'll see how they get on against Scotland. But overall, still quite a significant rank rise, and having the likes of Bale and Yarmolenko has really helped me. So I've got some things right this week, but it's always good to learn from the mistakes you make, and sometimes it's better than just getting everything spot on. 52 points this week so far, 120 points overall, and I'm around 34k. And of course, if I did have De Bruyne, if I did have Dumfries, I could have been looking at, top 5k even at this stage of the season. But of course, it's still early days. There's a lot to go through, and Matchday 3 is going to be very significant. And what I end up doing, whether I don't play the wild card or if I activate it, is going to be very crucial. But let me show you how my team is looking like for Matchday 3 without any chips being used. And I'll be honest, I haven't really given too much thought about the transfers I would make. But I think I have a good idea. It's quite obvious. But I've got Depay, Ronaldo, Lukaku up front. It's a very good front line on paper. But the problem here is that Lukaku might be benched against Finland. I think that could actually happen. They already qualified, same with Italy and a few other nations like the Netherlands. Depay, he's another one who could also be benched. Cristiano Ronaldo should play, but he's up against France, and I've already talked about this. His record against World Cup winning nations and the kind of biggest teams on the international stage is not really impressive, and it could be another tough game. Portugal might even get a result, but it might not even be Ronaldo scoring. But then again, you can never rule him out. But it's just 12 million. You probably want to invest that money elsewhere. Then you look at my midfield. I got Insigne, Berardi and Jota. And once again, I mean, I just don't see Jota getting points against France. That could be famous last words. And he was so poor, I have to say, in the opener against Hungary. He was so poor and should have gotten more points and more goals. Insigne and Berardi, they could be benched. It's very likely. I think Chiesa will come in for one of them. So it's just not ideal to have both of them in matchday 3, I think, and Italy have been so good. And yeah, I think they can afford to make some changes. So that's another concern I have, just a lot of rotation across the board. And I think a wild card could be very beneficial in terms of navigating those changes. But the problem would be is if in the end, a lot of these players that aren't rotated, that are in my original team, they play and they do really well, and then I'll regret the wild card. But it's a risk either way, I think. And then you look at my defense, I got Kjaer and Mæhle up against Russia. I think that could be a difficult game. Both teams could score. But I would expect Denmark to actually win that game. And Mæhle looked very good against Belgium. But yeah, Denmark defense, I just can't trust it. And I think it was a big mistake getting 2 Denmark defenders, and even 1 probably. But we'll see how what happens there. Wijndal, I actually think he could get some minutes. Veltman could come in for Dumfries, and Wijndal could also slot in the defense for the Netherlands. So there might be some rotation, and Wijndal could be one of those players who are benefited from that sort of rotation in matchday 3. So that's something to keep an eye on. Denayer did play in matchday 2, but it could be Boyata playing once again in his place. But I have to say, Belgium's defence looked really shaky, even in the second half, but in the first half particularly. I mean, the whole team was a mess, but the defence was just so shaky, and they should have conceded more goals. Then you look at my goalkeeper, Donnarumma. I'm pretty happy with him. He's not going to be rotated, I think, but you never know. And then you have Fredeschi up against Belgium. That's just not ideal. And then Nigo, he's not really going to do anything against Germany, you'd suspect, although he did get an assist for that disallowed goal against Portugal. It's just going to be very unlikely. Ferran Torres against Slovakia and Pau Torres, I think they could be really good options, but it depends ultimately on what happens in the Spain game tomorrow, because Spain could win that and qualify as a result, and then they rotate in matchday 3. So overall, as you can see with my team, there's some very good picks in there if they play, but I just don't know if that's going to happen. So if I were to make transfers and not play the wild card, I'd probably do something like this. I'd probably downgrade Cristiano Ronaldo, maybe to, let's say, for example, a Yaremchuk, who I mentioned before matchday 2 and even before matchday 1. He's a good option, and he's just continuing to do the business. He looks so good, and that would give me a lot of money in the bank, and I could literally go maybe, Jota. He could make way, and I'd bring in Kevin De Bruyne. But unfortunately, you only get 2 free transfers, and unlike UCL Fantasy, where if you use a Limitless chip or a wild card, you were able to store an additional transfer on top of the 2 you get each match day in the group stages. You'd get 3 transfers overall for free. But in this, you only get 2, as you can see here, and I've used up my 2 free transfers. So I'd do something like that probably. If not, maybe one of the Denmark defenders could make way, or even Lukaku, because Ronaldo might not, get many points against France, but at least he starts. And with Lukaku, I'm just not so sure if he's even going to play a single minute. And same with Depay, to be honest. So there's a lot of kind of uncertainty surrounding my team. And yeah, that's the thing with the international stage. And sometimes it's just really difficult to predict. That's why maybe the points aren't as high as maybe FPL, where everything's a bit more predictable and you can tell what the lineups are going to be. International tournaments are shorter, and there can be a lot of rotation at times, especially when there's really nothing to play for. But we'll wait and see what happens. That's kind of my initial thoughts in terms of what transfers I would make. But yeah, as you can tell, I'm just not really confident in most of the players I have, whether they're going to start or not. Now, let me show you what I would wildcard to if I activate the chip, because I do have it, and it's very likely, or at least there's a possibility of me using the chip. And there's actually some very interesting picks that I can go for, some good differentials, but there's still some kind of question marks surrounding 1 or 2 of these players, and I'll be talking about them. But in goal, I think Unai Simon and Stekelenburg is probably one of the best goalkeeping combinations you can go for. Only 9.5 million between the 2. Having said that, I keep on talking about it. I don't like the Netherlands defence, I really don't, and Dumfries is the only defender I think worth considering overall. But Stekelenburg at 4.5 million, facing North Macedonia, I think it's worth a shout. But then again, I think a lot of people looked at Ukraine, the likes of Zinchenko, and up against North Macedonia, and in the end they can still get a goal out of nothing. So that's something to kind of take into account. In terms of other goalkeepers I would consider, Donnarumma for sure, and I'd probably say... Yeah, I'd probably say Courtois still, but not so sure about the Belgium defence in that regard. And yeah, Pickford is an option, even the Croatian goalkeeper. And who else? I'd probably say, Manuel Neuer, but you probably would want to use one of those outfield slots on, for example, Gosens in defence, Leroy Sané, Gnabry, Müller, etc., Gundogan. So I'm not so sure about using a goalkeeper slot on Neuer, but still, he's an option. So those are kind of some of the best goalkeeper options you can go for in Matchday 3, in my opinion, at least in terms of the fixtures. Sometimes they can be a difficult fixture and a clean sheet is still there. So back your gut on that one. In terms of the defence, I think, Gosens is nearly a must-have on paper. He's facing Hungary, who conceded a lot of chances. Germany actually looked really good against France. They should have gotten something out of that game. And Gosens is so attacking. And in the friendly, I think, against Latvia, he was instrumental. So I think he's someone worth looking at. Now, this is someone who, if he starts, he's really good. And it's 4.5 million. Tyrone Mings. But there is a rumour that Maguire is back for the Scotland game, and if that's the case, it would be Maguire and Stones starting. So I'm not so sure about that. But then again, if Maguire's back, he plays against Scotland and England are through, they qualify with 6 points, whatever, then maybe Tyrone Mings comes back in for Matchday 3, and then in the knockouts it'll be Stones and Maguire starting the game. So I'm not so sure about Tyrone Mings in terms of starting, but if Maguire is out, then Mings will continue to start. I'm pretty sure of that. Spinazzola is just kind of a no-brainer at the moment. He's got the attacking potential, but also Italy are so solid defensively. That's 10 games now in a row with a clean sheet, and Italy have scored 31 goals in that period and conceded 0, of course. So incredible record, and Italy looks so solid. They actually are enjoyable to watch. Over the last few tournaments, they aren't particularly that nice to watch or appeasing on the eye, but this Italy team is different, and they've scored 3 goals in back-to-back games in the Euros, and before this tournament even started, they never scored 3 goals in a Euros tournament. So imagine the kind of change that Mancini has implemented there. So I think Spinazzola is the standout from Italy, no doubt about it. Thomas Meunier, very disappointing against Denmark, but I do think against Finland he can get an attack and return and maybe a clean sheet. But yeah, with Belgium, the defence isn't too good, and maybe there could be a Pookie party or something like that. So just bear that in mind. And I think Pau Torres is a good one on a wild card. Just cheap player if you don't have him already, and he faces Slovakia. Should start, and if he does, I think he'll get a clean sheet, but probably wouldn't expect more than 6 points, but still I think it's very good. Then you look at my midfield. Kevin De Bruyne I think is a must-have. Having him or Eden Hazard, I think they're both going to start, get that match fitness up. And I mean, just look at his performance against Denmark. I just wish I had him, and if I did, even if I didn't have Dumfries, I would just have been happy with that. But yeah, Kevin De Bruyne is so good, and he just showed why he's one of the best players in the world. In my opinion, the best midfielder in the world by a distance. And yeah, on the international stage, he's got more goals and assists of any player in a Euros nation team since the World Cup. So yeah, this guy's just been unbelievable for Belgium. And yeah, Berardi, this is one that I'm not so sure about because it could be Chiesa starting instead of him. So maybe you could go for Locatelli, who should be a bit more nailed and continue to start. And of course, he did get 14 points in Matchday 2. I wouldn't expect that to continuously happen, but yeah, you could always go for a cheaper option, maybe even David Alaba or someone like that. Although I'm not that interested, to be honest, in those sorts of assets. Around 6.5 million and below, Berardi's the only option, but if he doesn't start, you probably don't want to have him in your team. Yarmolenko, I think, a bit more convinced about him. He just looks so good, and I'm very happy to have got him in for Matchday 2 for that double-digit haul. And yeah, he's just been sensational in this tournament, and he looks so lively. He could have gotten more goals, and he's going to continue to get the points, I think. Austria is going to be a bit of a kind of difficult game. Both of them are going to be fighting for that qualification spot. But Ukraine look good offensively, not so much defensively, but that doesn't matter with Yarmolenko. He still can do the business. So yeah, he's definitely someone I would recommend. And on the Limitless for Matchday 2, I always talked about him. And yeah, he delivered, which is very good. Gnabry, I think he's got a great record for Germany. And even if he blanks against Portugal as well, don't be too put off by that, because I think against Hungary, that could be the game where he really comes to life in the tournament. What I will say is that if Hungary do play a low block, then it might not really be favourable for someone like Gnabry, who thrives when he has space in behind to run at, just like Mbappe. So maybe a Thomas Müller would suffice in the attack, but double Germany attack and having Gosens, who's really offensive and can get you the clean sheet points, I think that covers that game very well. So Gnabry is still someone worth considering. And Perisic, I think, for Croatia, he's the standout option from Croatia. And up against Scotland, who I think they're going to struggle defensively, and Scotland might even get something from the game, but you'd expect Croatia to score 1 or 2 goals minimum, and I think Perisic could do very well in that game. So Perisic, I think, is a good player. 1% owned. I mean, I didn't even know that. So yeah, keep an eye on Perisic. I think he could do the business. And as for my front line, Yaremchuk, Müller and Moreno. Moreno's a bit of a weird one. Once again, if Spain do qualify, then maybe Moreno will get his chance against Slovakia. Thomas Müller, I think, from Germany, he's probably the standout option along with Gosens. And yeah, I think if Germany do thrash Hungary, I think Müller will be a big part of that with goals and assists, and he's only 9 million, and also a differential at 4%. I think that's what I really like about this wildcard team. There's a lot of differentials in there that could really boost you up the ranks in Matchday 3. And Yaremchuk, maybe what you could do is go off the double Ukraine attack, despite how good both of them have been, Yarmolenko and Yaremchuk, scoring the bulk of Ukraine's goals in this tournament. Maybe you could just stick with one of them, and instead of Yaremchuk, you can go for Mbolo, for example, or Immobile, and maybe change the structure of your team. So that's something worth considering. But 3% ownership, and he's just continued to deliver. Yeah, Yaremchuk looks very, very good. So that's the kind of wildcard team I would recommend. In terms of other options, I think it's always important to talk about other options. I think from Italy, Chiesa would be one of the top ones, because I think he will start. And if he does, he's in for gold there. And maybe Immobile if you trust him to start, although that's, once again, we're entering the grey area of ifs, buts and maybes, so who knows about that. From Switzerland, as I mentioned before, I think Mbolo would be the one I'd be looking at. No one else really from Switzerland. And then Ukraine, Austria. Yeah, I'd probably look at Malyanovsky still, despite obviously his penalty miss. But yeah, other than that, I'd probably stay away from Zinchenko and the other defenders. They could keep a clean sheet, but it's just I've been burned by Zinchenko this week, so I'm a bit biased there. From the Netherlands, I think Wijndal should start. There is Dumfries. If he starts, then he's just obviously gold, but I'm just not so sure if he'll keep his spot. And yeah, I'd probably say Depay. But once again, all these very good assets from Netherlands, they might be benched, even Wijnaldum and Dumfries. So I'm not so sure about this fixture, unfortunately, and this is why I did play my Limitless in Matchday 2. From Belgium, I think Eden Hazard, Kevin De Bruyne are the standouts. You want to go for them. Thomas Meunier should continue to start because Castagna is out for the tournament. And yeah, other than that, I'd probably just stick to those 3. You might take a punt on maybe a Batshuayi or Benteke, but yeah, that's very risky territory there. Russia-Denmark, I'll be honest, I'd try to avoid this game, if I'm honest, but if you do back Denmark, you could go for Mæhle. You could also go for maybe Poulsen, and from Russia I'd say Zuba and Golovin. But yeah, ultimately I think this is a game you want to avoid. Czech Republic against England, this could be where a lot of the kind of fringe players get some minutes, so Sancho, Jack Grealish, all these sorts of players that could do the business, Rashford even. So yeah, with England, Czech Republic, maybe it's worth considering someone else other than Kane or Sterling. And also, the fullback situation, I'd probably just avoid England fullbacks altogether. Apparently, against Scotland, it could be Reece James and Luke Shaw as the fullbacks. And so you don't want to have this chopping and changing. Trippier and Walker 1 week, and then, Shaw or Chilwell, and then someone else on the right. It's just complete chaos. So I'd probably stick to one of their defenders. John Stones, Tyrone Mings, if he is obviously... if Maguire's still injured. So yeah, I probably wouldn't overcomplicate with England against Czech Republic. With Croatia, as I said before, the goalkeeper and Perisic would be my 2 standouts. You could maybe go for a Rebic or someone like that, but yeah, I'd probably stick to those 2. Sweden against Poland, pretty interesting game to be fair. You could say Forsberg, Isaac. I probably would avoid the Sweden defence. I'm not sure about a clean sheet here, but I would say that Sweden defenders are probably better assets than the Polish ones. And as for Poland, I think Lewandowski, Zielinski. But other than that, I'm not really too confident in Polish assets. Slovakia against Spain, you'd probably want to be back in Spain in this one. Gerard Moreno or Morata, depending on who you think is going to start. And then I'd be looking at defenders. Jordi Alba, I think, is a fantastic option for this week. Or if not, Gaia. Whoever starts on that left-hand side could get a lot of joy against Slovakia. And then, Pau Torres, Unai Simon, all these sorts of defensive options you want to go for. And then, yeah, Ferran Torres even. You don't want to forget about him. Portugal against France, I think that's going to be a tough game. It could even be a draw. So I'm not so sure about that game. Germany-Hungary, I already talked about those sorts of players. So you know my thoughts on that. So those are kind of my options on the wild card, and hopefully that does help you out. And the same applies to the Limitless, of course. So I'm just going to be showing you what I would Limitless to if I had the chip. And of course, if you're not sure about Depay starting, for example, you can always change him to a Yaremchuk, to an Mbolo, and to other options. Maybe Lukaku if you back him to start. But there's going to be a lot of kind of doubts that you're going to have of who's going to start. But this team, if they all like play 90 minutes, I mean, this could be a crazy score. You could be looking at 100 points from this week alone. But Donnarumma and Unai Simon, I think, are the best keepers you can have this week if you have no budget restrictions. There's no doubt about it. I already told you that Stekelenburg at 4.5 million, he's a good option, but obviously from the Netherlands defence, you probably would want Dumfries for his attacking potential, and you do have it covered here on the Limitless. But then just bear in mind that it could be Veltman taking Dumfries' place for Matchday 3 to give him a rest. So just bear that in mind. And Jordi Alba, could be him or Gaia, but Jordi Alba I think is the best option, and he should start. And Jordi Alba, I mean, this guy hopefully does well in Matchday 2. 14% ownership, so he is, quite fairly owned. But yeah, I think Jordi Alba is a good option. Thomas Meunier, but then again, with Belgium potentially rotating, and if they're going to be that shaky defensively, maybe he's not the best option. But I do like Thomas Meunier's attacking potential. Spinazzola, not much more that needs to be said. Gossens, already talked about him. And yeah, Dumfries, I mean, the man of the moment, one of the highest scoring players in the game so far, if not the highest. I mean, this guy, yeah, I wish I had him for Matchday 2. It is what it is. I didn't get him, but yeah, what a player this. And then the midfield, Yarmolenko, Kevin De Bruyne, and I'd have Eden Hazard. I think they would score the bulk of the points for Belgium in terms of goals and assists. So having De Bruyne and Hazard, being able to have both of them, I mean, it's just incredible. And in terms of international competitions, who's got the most assists? I think since the 2014 World Cup or something like that, Hazard and De Bruyne are top. So they're really good assets, and they both have goal threat. And if Eden Hazard can get that spark back, I mean, what a player he is. And Belgium have a really good chance of winning the Euros if both of them are at their best. And then, yeah, Perisic and Gnabry I already talked about before, and I think they're two of the best options this week. So if you're able to have them, Yarmolenko, De Bruyne and Hazard as your midfield, I mean, you're pretty much set, to be honest. You could always go for one of the English midfielders, but it's going to be a bit riskier, kind of judging who's going to start there. And then the front line, I think Harry Kane, if he starts, but not so sure about that. Against Czech Republic, he could get a good haul there. And then, yeah, Thomas Müller, standout option this week. And then maybe someone like Depay. Will he start though? I'm not so sure. But North Macedonia, if Depay, Wijnaldum and Dumfries start, I mean, I think they could get monster hauls individually. And if you have all three of them, you could be in for a massive week. So yeah, that's how I would go about it if I was playing the Limitless. Just a brief summary, because it's quite similar to my wildcard team with obviously a bit more improvements in certain areas because of the budget restrictions not being there. But that's how I would approach it. In terms of the captaincy options, so of course, if I do play my wildcard, this could change, and I'll be talking about it in my deadline stream, so stay tuned for that. But as my team stands, and if I do make those two transfers I talked about, so Kevin De Bruyne and Yaremchuk potentially, my captains would be like this. It'd be on the Sunday, the first day of Matchday 3, I would be captaining an Italian player, probably Insigne. But of course, if I did wildcard, then I'd probably be looking at Spinazzola because I back him to start, and also because of the clean sheet potential. And then on the Monday, a lot of games there, I'd definitely be getting De Bruyne in as my captain, and I back him to start. He's got huge potential for scoring points, both from goals and assists, and he faces Finland. So, I mean, what is there not to like about that fixture? I think that could be incredible. So yeah, Kevin De Bruyne would definitely be my captain on the Monday, whether it's, if I was using the Limitless, the wild card, or no wild card and I bring him in. De Bruyne's just a standout on that day. On the Tuesday, I'll be honest, I don't think I have any options there, do I? No, I don't have any English players. So yeah, that's just something that's a bit of a concern for me. But yeah, if I did wildcard, I'd probably be captaining Perisic on that day, and I think he could do extremely well. So that's something I am considering, to be honest. If I do wildcard, it'd be Perisic as my captain. And then on the Wednesday, the final day, I'd be looking at a German player. I might even put a cheeky pun on Gossens, on Gerard Moreno. or maybe Gnabry or Müller, but that's a difficult one. I think that would be the most difficult captaincy decision I have. I'm not that confident in German defence. They haven't kept too many clean sheets over the last 20 matches they've had. But yeah, I'd probably consider a German asset in that, and probably maybe I'd be going for Müller. Well, yeah, Müller or Gnabry. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not too sure about that. I think Gnabry's a bit more explosive, but Müller's a bit more consistent, and he can get you goals and assists at any time. His international record is very good. So that's kind of my thoughts on the captaincy if I do wildcard. Of course, if I don't, then I'd probably have to be looking at someone like Ferran Torres as my captain. But that's how it is at the moment. That is my team. And yeah, as you've probably gathered throughout the whole video, not very confident in terms of who's going to start and who isn't, and hopefully we have a bit more of an idea closer to the deadline, and that will help me make an informed decision about whether to play the wildcard or not. But let me know, what do you think? Should I be playing the wildcard for Matchday 3 and build a really good team for that game week and make the most of it with some very good differentials? Or should I keep things as they are and only make 2 transfers, such as Kevin De Bruyne coming in and just leaving the wildcard for the quarterfinals or the semi-finals or the final if need be? Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Thank you for all the support. Of course, we reached 3,000 subscribers recently and we're still growing, so really appreciate all the support. And yeah, remember to join the league. The links are in the description below. And yeah, really appreciate all the feedback on my team and also just in general, talking about football and all of this sort of stuff. So really appreciate all the support, and I'll see you next time.